Okay. So we'll end this session with the meditation, and right now I'm going to ask you some questions, and then you can ask me some questions. So first I'm going to ask you, if someone said, what is one way, one of the many ways, to meditate on close placement on the body, what would you say?
Imagining it dying.
Imagining it dying.
Repulsively. Not always dying, but...
And if they said, why meditate on it dying, what would you say?
To release attachment.
Curiosity. Because everything is there.
Very nice. Yeah, very nice. Yeah. Kali? Yes.
Release attachment.
Release attachment. Yep, very nice. I'm surprised you went to that one.
Fearless from the death is because a lot of our actions matter in this.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah. And what other ways could you meditate on close placement on the body?
To put all our focus on the different
Senses.
On the senses.
breath,
Yep.
ears, eyes.
Yep, exactly. Everything okay?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. What's other ways? Yep, the breath. Did you say? I heard someone.
So the focus on the sentence, on the senses.
Yeah, on the senses. Yep. On the senses, on the breath, on dying, on repulsiveness. What else? Sensations. Yep. Yeah. What else? Yes, inner parts, right? And remember we did the elements, earth, fire. Remember that one? That's my favorite. No one mentioned. So there's heaps, right? There's lots of different ways you can meditate on close placement on the body. And what you choose to do, you choose based on what is it I want to accomplish and what's the format that gets me there, right? So if you think, okay, right now I'm having a lot of attachment and fixation and obsession about my body, and I'm just fiddling with it all the time and worried that it's not attractive enough, and should I go to the gym more, and I'm doing weird diets and I'm getting all kind of strange about it, and oh my god, another wrinkle, and you're freaking out. So you think, I'm a little strongly identified with the body. Am I the body? Right? And then you're like, all right, so probably now's not the time for the repulsiveness meditation because I'm all full of self-obsession and self-absorption, and yet I'm also not liking it. Maybe corpse is better. Let's do corpse. Right? It's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. So let's really get myself to de-identify from it, right? If I think it's bad now, it's not going to get any better with time, right? We're not going to reverse age. So it help you de-identify, or you could think about, is the surface even the body, right? Like really, what is the body? Where is the body? And to really ask yourself, what's my issue? And then you can go to what's my technique to help overcome that issue. Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yes.
But
no.
Sadly, very, very sadly, society judge, especially women, with their appearance, and I don't agree with this. I disagree. And also, I have in my job under me women, and this is a very big problem. Also, when you are interviewing for a job, your appearance counts.
Yeah.
So.
That's annoying.
Yeah, that's very, very annoying, but that is the reality. And also society, not just in job interviews, judge you and think, okay, and that's why there is a very big problem. The teenagers, teenagers obsessed all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Their body image.
So
everything is body image.
Meditation.
You're asking it's a good practical issue, right? Like so many things, like when we were talking about 8 worldly concerns and reputation, right? The same issues apply where, okay, no one else has gone to this retreat except you, right? So then when you go home, how are you gonna, right? They're gonna think you are an alien, from outer space, right? So how do you live in a way that holds this wisdom that you've touched, that holds these truths that you've touched, but you still act in a way that doesn't scare the world, right? And we all have our versions of how we maintain being accessible without becoming fixated on needing to play the game about it, right? And so you know that, okay, what are the real things about appearance that are really going to put people off? Not the ones that I've taken on and gotten all weird about, but the real ones. All right, clean. I should try and be clean, right? I should wear clothes that aren't dirty, right? And if I'm in a professional situation, buttons seem like a good idea. I don't know, I don't remember, right? Buttons, right? That's what makes it like going to work, I don't know. But you know, it's really not significantly more than, okay, here's professional clothes, I know what those are supposed to be. These are at-home relaxing clothes, I know what those should be, and be clean. Right, it's not hugely more than that, but we get all sort of weird and obsessed and fiddling, right? Fiddling and trying to get it just right. Those extra details, no one but you notices.
Yeah, it was not a question.
It's a definite statement.
I'm just saying that it's a big problem.
It is.
It's reality.
Yeah,
it
it's
is.
reality.
But do you know
Reality is a big problem.
reality is a big problem, right?
Potential
Exactly.
But really, how can
I'm trying.
other people's opinion?
Yeah.
I'm trying to do the best.
One way to deal with it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do the best with the
Absolutely.
people around me.
Absolutely.
I'm just a small person in a small place.
But I mean, just think of those very basic things. Do you know that experience of, do you have like a messy friend in your life that doesn't look after their housework at all, right? Did everyone have that friend? Everyone has that friend, right? And, right, your messy friend. When you go to your messy friend's house, it's sort of a relief. Right?
Freedom.
Right, not always. Right. But when you go to your friend's house that like it's beautiful and it's clean and everything is like really perfect, not like the middle way like the rest of us, right? But someone who has a really beautifully kept house, you're a bit sort of like, I don't want to break anything. You know that feeling, right? And so the way that we are in ourselves has an impact on the people around us. So if we are holding, I don't care what you look like, I care about your heart. Yeah, I know that you have Buddha nature, even if on the surface there's some chaos, right? And when you're with people, you're speaking to their wisdom, you're speaking to their Buddha nature, you're speaking to their good qualities. Those are what come out of them. You know, if you speak to their insecurities and you speak to their afflictions, those are what come out of them, because everyone is a mixture. But if you yourself are holding this position of, people will judge the way I look, they will, right? Even if I do it perfectly, they will. What I need to do is to not care and not do that. So I'm one person in the world not making it worse, and I'm also one person in the world that's making it safer. Right? Then the people around you start to feel safer. Like you're not judging them so they can relax a little bit. Mm-hmm. You know, like being at your messy friend's house, you can kind of put your feet up on the coffee table, right? It's that experience of you're creating an atmosphere around you all the time and you don't even realize you're always just feeling the impact of other people's atmosphere. You forget that you're putting one out there. Yeah, and so whenever you touch these things in retreat, you just hold them very secretly, very privately, but deeply and live them. And it has this impact on people that you don't even realize. The first one being, they feel safe with you. They feel more relaxed with you. And you feel more relaxed with you. Yeah, and you know, you could get to the point where even you wear very strange clothes, no one minds, right? Right?
It's all about energies and what you reflect. If you feel good with inside your skin and you're safe and you're comfortable, that's what people will feel towards you and towards themselves.
Yeah. And I mean, I do know, I notice this a lot since I wear the same clothes every day, right? I mean, I have the clean set and the one that's on the, right? I have two sets, don't worry. One is on the line washing, right? But I wear the same thing every day. I've looked the same for nearly 15 years, right? But, you know, I mean, I'm aging, but not like in a significant obvious way yet. Right, stay tuned. But I noticed the way that people respond to this appearance, which is the same every day. The way they respond is so much to do with what my mood is, right? There are days when there was this guy at the supermarket in Lod, right? Lod is a little bit, mixed, right? I was at the supermarket, and this guy that's stocking the shelves, he said, "Oh, you look like Demi Moore in G.I. Jane. You're so beautiful." And he was just like, I was like,
That's
thanks.
true, though.
No, but that's not always the response, right? And then I was one time in the airport in China, and this woman was across from me, and she was looking at me and shaking her head, and then she said, "I think your mother cries every day." That's her opening statement, right? And so, it's the same clothes, it's the same face. Right? I think your mother cries every day. I'm like, well, maybe, but I should call her. So it's really interesting to look at. Yes, the appearance does have an effect, and people do have their projections and all their baggage that they're coming at you with, but your mood very much influences their response. And when you're in just kind of a happy, free, open space, you can kind of be friends with anyone. And when you get kind of insecure, like I was thinking in that airport, I was a little insecure because it's China, right? And they're not like huge fans of Tibetan Buddhism, right? And I was kind of like, oh, I hope nothing happens. And I was feeling a bit insecure and a little bit fragile. And then I was tired and jet lagged, and I have many airport stories, right? You can tell. And that was the response I was getting. And I had a few weird interactions from people, and none of them were Chinese people. They were, this woman was from like South Africa or something, but I think my vulnerability and my fragility kind of brought out that in the people around me. But in Lod, I work there several days a week. I'm quite relaxed, getting tea, So the checkout guy was like very friendly. No doubt he was a friendly guy anyway, right? But why I met that in him was very much about me too. He might have ignored me if I was having a fragile day, despite him being a friendly guy, right? So it's just that thing of holding very steady to your values quietly living them. And it does have this impact on the people around you. They start to feel safe with you. Yeah. But yes, so what would Gandhi say, right? Be the change you want to see in the world. Yeah. And at the same time, all right, I have to wear socks, fine. Like I have to take a shower, right? No one is going to hang out with me if I stink, right? There's the basic practical things. Yeah. No, okay, so then if someone were to say to you, how do you meditate on close placement on feeling? What's one of the many ways?
Impermanence, the change.
Yes, exactly. Emptiness of feeling? Yep.
Analyzing, no?
Yep. You can, yeah, that's another one, right?
Another one is to look at it.
Look at them, let them go. Yep, say, hey, all right, anyway.
You already.
Yep, yeah, exactly, I know you already. This is a very good one. We have met before.
Thank you for sharing.
What's that? Thank you for sharing. Yeah, this is a good one. And it keeps a lightness to it, doesn't it? And it helps you not be so invested in them. If you can have this objectivity that is like meeting something else, right? The feelings are not you.
Postcards from home.
Yes, exactly, postcards from home. You're like, all right, that's what you're saying. Anyway, yeah, onto the pile. Yeah. Sorry?
The idea is not to get one with the feeling.
You can, when you're focusing single-pointedly on them, you're sort of focused one with them, but not identifying as them. And that, and then when you're doing analysis on them, you're very much saying, all right, this is arising here in this space, but it's not me, and I don't need to sort of take identity with it. Yeah, exactly. And, then you can start asking it questions like, how can I make whatever it is useful? Because it's useful if it's pleasant, it's useful if it's unpleasant, it's useful if it's neutral. When you apply other techniques like mind training, when even you just watch it and develop deeper self-awareness, It's all useful information. So you're also developing this friendliness with yourself that whatever arises is workable and okay. You don't have to have this pushing away because you know it will end, but you also don't have to have this feeding, that they're just like waves, they come and they go, and they come and they go. And some of them you enjoy the ride, and some of them you are scared of, and some of them, etc., etc. They are just waves. So that deep knowledge has so many effects in your life. And it also helps you with empathy. The more you have self-awareness of what happens with you under the influence of your feelings, then when you see other people behaving badly, it's like you see yourself in them, right? You're like, that's like me when I'm like that. Yep, I get that. And when you see yourself in other people, compassion comes very naturally. It really does. And so if you're a little bit blocked from your personal experience, it's much easier to be judgmental and critical of people. You're like, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing that? If you have self-awareness, you're like, I know why you're doing that. It's still obnoxious, but I get it. I get it. I am that person some days. And so your heart opens and you can be a bit more effective with people because you really do see, that's like me, that's like me, that's like me.
It also reduces fear up to a point that you're more sufficient, and that makes you also more open.
It does.
So it works on everybody.
This is true.
What if you're floating with that feeling? Let's say you wake up with a very, very bad mood, and you do your meditation, and you're in such a bad mood that you cannot really be identified from your feelings. So what is it?
What is the last thing?
What technique would you use then in that case when you're so much identified with that?
And that's the tricky one, the first thing in the morning one, when you're caught off guard one, especially if you've been going through a rough time and your first experience upon waking is, you have those mornings where your first waking thought is no, right? And that's, that happens to us, especially when we're overwhelmed, when we're overtired, when big things have happened, when we're exhausted. The first thought is no. And again, when you've done this meditation during easier times, it makes a little window or a little crack that makes it less likely for you to believe the no, even while you're still feeling it. You're like, all right, this is uncomfortable. I don't like this. I hope it will change. Stupid. Or I don't care. It can last forever. This is just life. You can get into that too. But if you have this previous experience, there's a tiny little flicker of light in the back of your mind that says, it's going to pass. It's going to pass. It always has. It always has. That's the little flicker of light is what you're making brighter and brighter and brighter every time you meditate. So that when you have that experience of being flooded with sensations or feelings or whatever that is really overwhelming and hard to have space from, there's that tiny part of you that knows better.
Yeah, I know. The question is, how do you deal in that moment? Do you let them be?
Yeah, you hold on to that bit of light. They will overwhelm you if you feed them, right? If you give them more to keep them going. They will die a natural death if you don't feed them. They will, right? So what you do is you turn your mind to that little flicker of light that says it will pass. You turn your mind to that little flicker of light that says this is not you, right? And you just kind of connect there and go about your day, and it will just fade if you don't give it energy. So part of you is watching it. You're not suppressing, you're not denying. You're in a bad mood, but you're not identifying with it. You just kind of let it be as one part of a vast array of experiences. And your ability to do that is something that gradually grows. You can't do it just immediately. And you'll forget. You'll forget tomorrow, right? Even though you've just done this retreat. But over time, more often will that little flicker of light remind you, this will pass, this is not you, this does not stand alone, and it's workable. Yeah, that light just gets brighter and brighter. And so, some of you know I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which means I have a lot of chronic pain. And so first thing in the morning, my thought is usually, ow, right? Ow. And when I was a teenager, man, it made me depressed because I had this association that pain equals sadness and pain equals anger and pain equals depression, right? That little moment of time where it could just be pain. And I could be like, ow, damn it. Oh, well, it changes everything when you can sort of, all right, that's part of my experience. So that means I need to be a little bit moving slowly, a little bit gentle until that wave of pain passes. But in the meantime, I need to live my life. In the meantime, I still want to get work done. And so am I going to let my body be the boss? Right? Am I going to decide I am my body? Then I'll waste my life. Yeah. And also, part of you is saying, all right, and it is the ripening result of old negative karma. So if I respond to it well, it will finish. It will finish. It will happen less and less. And it does happen less and less. And your response to it is different every time because you think, or I think, if I hadn't had so much physical pain, I would have much less empathy for other people when they struggle. Yeah. Because a lot of young people don't know what it is to have aches and pains. Yeah, they don't find out until they're middle-aged, right? Then they find out. They're like, what? Right? And so then the young people can be a little bit cut off from what it's like to have aches and pains, and they can be blocked to the empathy with people who are experiencing it. So part of me is like even celebrating that this was, some genetic thing I was born with, right? Due to karma, right? Like, yay, that's a knowing I wouldn't have otherwise. Yeah, and so when you're going through hardship, part of you knows this is what I need to change. If everything was easy, I'd like to think then I'd say, yay, now I have all this time to practice, everything's easy. But if everything was easy, you would just relax and say, right? Put your feet up and enjoy it. It's when things are difficult that you put effort in. So part of you remembers that and goes, great. Yeah, sort of cringing, but like really you do know it will help you. Yeah, you're like, this is horrible, great. Yeah. Which is different than saying horrible isn't horrible, right? Which is different than being like the plastic person that says, no, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. No, you're saying this is horrible and that's great. It's different, isn't it, than pretending it's not horrible, right? This is horrible and that is fantastic. Yes, right? That is a level of knowing I wouldn't have otherwise. Yes, right? And you can still be annoyed in the back of your mind and wish it would change, but it's that little crack of wisdom, that little light of wisdom that knows this is going to help. Yeah. Okay, so then close placement on mind. How do you do? What's one of the ways?
Main mind.
Main mind. Close placement on main mind.
When you say main mind, so is there another mind?
So when we divide awareness, so you have awareness is the biggest category, right? Awareness. Mm-hmm. And then aspects of awareness are its main minds, those 6, and its mental factors, those 51 plus, right? So the stable reflective aspect and the moving aspect. And of the main minds, the one we were looking at is the main mental consciousness, right? So not the eye or the ear or the nose consciousness, but the mental primary consciousness, that one. So so that's your focal object. That's your focal object.
You have cats in here?
No, there is a party downstairs.
Babies.
Kids.
Kids.
No, because sometimes cats come.
There are many cats also. Okay, so so that your focal object is the main primary consciousness.
Can you say again? I'm getting confused with conscious, awareness, mind.
Yes, and they are used synonymously, which is why you get confused, right? So I'm glad you said that. Yeah, so awareness and consciousness and mind get used as synonyms when we're talking about this big category. Yeah, and then when we're talking about the aspects, the different pieces, to clarify, we say main mind or primary consciousness for that part, which is reflective, and mental factors for all of those things that move, like feeling, like discrimination, etc. Right?
So main mind is the mirror.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the main mind.
That's the main mind. So we sometimes simplify it and we just say focus on the mind, meaning focus on the main mind. Because if you haven't done tons of study, you don't want to get tangled, right? So put your mind on the reflective aspect, put your mind on the moving aspect. That's a way of explaining minds and mental factors if you haven't done all of this elaborate study, but it still gets you to the right place. But for those of you that are interested, this is its own subject, how the mind works. Yeah, mind and its potential. And it's quite interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting one, especially you psychology people. It's interesting. But yeah, that's its own subject. And so to kind of shortcut, to just so we don't have to do that whole lesson, we just kind of talk in general, the reflective aspect of mind, the moving aspect of mind, mind and mental factors. So you can hear in the context which one is being referred to, even though there's some doubling up of words. So you can hear based on context. That will help. Yeah. Okay, so then how else do you meditate on close placement of the mind? Sky. Yep. Looking at the sky-like nature of the mind. Yep.
So it's like spaciousness.
Spaciousness. Yeah.
Spaciousness.
Yeah, exactly.
Changing.
Yep. The reflections are always changing.
So the reflections are changing.
The reflections are changing.
The mind.
It is, and it isn't.
Because it's like a mirror that, the last meditation I was thinking.
Yeah.
Because you ask if it's changing. It is changing.
It is, yeah.
But what's reflected is changing.
Yeah.
But the mirror is not changing.
The mirror isn't changing as obviously because it keeps having the same aspect each moment. Yeah, so the previous moment of mind is the cause for the next moment of mind, right? But they all have that reflective aspect, so it seems kind of like something permanent. Seems very much more permanent. Whereas the reflections have such obvious movement, it's easier to see that. Yeah, so it's, it's a subtle distinction. And so if the main mind feels more permanent, that's quite normal, because it's, of a similar type each moment.
Yeah. To be sure, you mean literally to lay down and look at the sky, right?
No, we're using that as like the analogy, right?
That's what I thought in the previous.
Yeah.
That's the same as the previous.
Like
when we say look at the main mind, we think of the sky as a way of thinking of the main mind.
Yes.
So what is the other option?
I haven't gotten to close placement on phenomena yet.
No, not phenomena, on the mind. You ask what is the second option of looking at the main mind, and they say looking at the sky, and for a minute I thought
we're talking about details of the same. Details of the same, details of the same. We're just clarifying that same one, which is the main one to do. Yeah.
Is this the sixth one?
Yes. Yep. Totally.
The 5 senses, and this is the sixth one?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. Very good. Yes.
You say observe or investigate your mind. Who is the observer?
Indeed. Indeed.
The mind.
Indeed.
She asks us.
Yes.
During the meditation.
Yes, and I can, to give you the straight book answer sometimes makes it harder to touch the truth of it, right? So I kind of wanted to leave it open for a little bit, leave you confused for a little bit, because that's a more useful process than just spoon feeding you the answers. You want to really look for yourself. Who is the observer? Who is the observer? And you will keep changing your mind about who is the observer, and that is excellent, right? Right?
But is there one right answer?
Well, there is and there isn't. The observer in general is the mental factor of introspection, right? But the problem is that each one that you think is the observer winds up being related to something else. Your observer starts to feel like it's the permanent self that is watching or controlling everything else, when in fact anything you choose to see as the observer or the self winds up being connected to countless other things. So what you're supposed to find is you're trying to find not finding. This is what you're trying to find, is the not finding.
So when do people find the true self?
Well, indeed. Indeed. Yeah, just keep doing this, it'll come.
Yeah, also I didn't understand. So there is self, or in Buddhism there is no self.
Indeed, right. There are two, right? There is the one that exists and the one that doesn't exist, right? The one that does exist is so subtle. It is so subtle. It's as if it doesn't exist. But there's obviously experience. There's obviously, a mental continuum.
What is the definition of self in Buddhism?
That which is merely labeled on the collection of aggregates.
Wow.
I didn't understand that.
Indeed, right. So that which is merely labeled on the collection of aggregates. The aggregates, yes, indeed, right. Yeah. So in your Heart Sutra, this is an easy way so you don't feel like you'll forget. If you turn to the Heart Sutra, it has the list of what the 5 aggregates are. Yes? So on page 8, and we'll do emptiness as time goes by in discovering Buddhism, but it's woven throughout all the topics, of course, right? It's just page 8. Page 8. Okay. Yes. So the bottom of page 7, remember this was the big bit, of any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should do what, right? Should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature, right? And then over the page, form is empty, etc. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Those are the 5 aggregates, right? Form, yeah. Yep, form, right? Feeling, yeah. Discrimination, compositional factors, consciousness. Yep, so you've got your list there in the Heart Sutra. So discrimination isn't like discrimination of I don't like black people, right? This is discernment, right? Recognition, the ability to label, right? It's not discrimination in the other sense, yeah. And I do like black people, don't worry. You're like, oh God, she's a racist, oh no. Not that word, discrimination. Discrimination in the terms of discernment, right? Yeah, no one, no, it's okay. It's okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so self, right? So you're focused. Self is that which is merely labeled on the 5 aggregates, merely labeled on the collection. Anything more than that is the self that does not exist. And that is the one we think of as the self, which is why we do all these meditations to pull it apart and see that it's not there like that. So there is a self. It's that which is merely labeled on the collection. That's there, that's a relative thing, right? But then we think there's more to the story, extra, and that's the one, that's the pretender, right? That's the pretender. So these meditations help you see that there's no 6th aggregate, of self also, right? That dissolves. So I don't know, does that help a little? This is the huge topic, right? We're just sort of touching it, but this is the crux of the issue. When you realize that other false self doesn't exist, everything frees up. Everything frees up.
The 5 aggregates, actually, you can say it's the body and mind, right?
Exactly.
So if it is the body and mind, and this is the base on which I label
yes.
you, like I see your body, and then I put a label on you.
Yep.
But when I'm talking about myself,
yeah.
Since I am the one labeling my mind, and the mind is part of the 5 aggregates, so what is the problem in saying that the base is actually me? Like there is the body, okay, it's separate from my mind.
Mm-hmm.
My mind is separate from the body.
Yeah.
But since I am the one labeling and the label comes from the mind, what is the problem of saying it's there? It's like me and my mind, my body and my mind.
Because you are not the labeler. The mental factor of discrimination is the labeler.
It's in my mind.
Yeah, well, my is the problem. Mind isn't the problem. Mind is labeling. The problem is my. Right? That's the problem, is my.
It's a label that comes from my mind.
It comes from mind. No, see, this is the issue, right? And this is what we're trying to get to experientially. This is the crux of the issue. There is mind. Absolutely there is mind. But who owns it? You say me. Okay, find me. Find me.
It's a label. Okay, but it's a label coming from the mind.
You're going in circles, yeah? You're going in circles. And so this is something to take to your meditation. Yeah, I think that more words won't help yet. I think you have to look for what it is you think you're going to find. I think you should look for it. And find the no finding. I think you will find the no finding. Yeah? Otherwise you'll get trapped in words.
Because the mind cannot be found. So that's again circle.
Yeah, you're cutting corners. It's not that simple. It's not that simple. Yeah? The mind is findable-ish.
It is findable-ish?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
the core is kind of a potential.
There is no core.
Potential.
There is no core.
The true self.
Yeah, the true self. This is the thing, right?
No, you said that there's a mind that self that labeled.
The labeler is
another self. There is something. Okay.
There is. Yeah, well, say your question again now.
Somewhere, sometime.
Yeah, say your question.
Maybe I didn't understand, but continue.
Mm-hmm.
She asked.
Yeah.
I thought maybe the something I would call it. It's like a potential of everything.
Emptiness is like that. Emptiness is like the potential, right? Yeah. Yeah. So when we meditate on emptiness, we're not meditating on nothingness, right? That would be the mistake. When we're meditating on emptiness, we're seeing a quality that an existent thing has, okay? So meditating on the emptiness of the clock relies on there being a clock, right? So how do you see that the clock is empty? First, you go through dependent arising and you see that it looks like it's a clock all by itself, right? That's what it seems when you first look at it. And it seems to be obvious. Yeah, this word obvious is something interesting to play with. The self seems obvious. The clock seems obvious. Like it couldn't possibly be anything else. Forgetting that there was a time when we didn't know what this was, but it was still there. Right? Forgetting that there was a time when there were no clocks. Forgetting that someone built this. Forgetting that we can only recognize it based on its parts. It's not a self-existing thing. Yeah? And the self is exactly like that. So there is something there, but it's not as it appears. It appears to be one. It appears to be one. The self seems like one. And your first level of thinking of the self as one is the body. And then as soon as you meditate on the body, you realize the body is not one, is not permanent, right? You see how it falls apart, right? And then there's still though something you can label on, right? So I can say this is Yönten here, right? This is Yönten here. But as soon as I go here too closely, I get to a part. No, these are Yönten's shoulders. Right? These are shoulders, right? And you're like, all right, so there's a shoulder there. Where? This part of the bone, that part of the bone, this ligament. At what point does it actually become a shoulder? Okay, I can label shoulder, but the closer you get, the harder it is to find. You see what I mean? Yeah? So it's not a problem with the shoulder or the clock. It's a problem with the self, because as soon as you think of the self as one and permanent and independent, immediately there is barriers that create conflict. Yeah.
That's what puzzles me, because I think, maybe I'm very wrong, but emptiness seems to me full of potential.
Yes, very good. Yes.
Yes?
Bravo. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, very good. It's like a space things arise within,
Yes,
right?
but it's full, it's very rich.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Maybe a better word would be everythingness, right? Everythingness instead of emptiness, in a way.
Why does it? I'm confused about the fact. Okay, what my understanding is that we're trying to get out of the me, my, I thing. Okay. So if I want to get to the true self, let's be for a moment in an ideal world. Of how, I mean, Yönten is Yönten. I'm labeling you as Yönten. I'm not labeling you as everything or emptiness.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, good.
So, and when you say something to me, you say it to me.
Yeah.
It's not like you're saying you.
Yeah, and that is all true.
So,
Yeah, that's no problem.
So where is the problem then?
The problem is thinking that is all there is, right? Like, again, looking from a distance, there is me talking to you, you talking to me, right? From a distance, that's very clear. Or in the relative world, the conventional world, that is very clear. The closer you get, the harder that is actually to find, right? Where
the
do
ultimate,
and where do I
reality?
Where do I stop and you begin? You know, it's easy to say with our bodies, but where is this I that's having experience? The I here that's having experience is completely related to the words you've just said. So are now your words me, but they came from you? Are now my words you, but they came from me? You know, where I stop and you begin becomes much more abstract.
So all you're
right?
talking is about interconnection.
It is, but very subtle.
It's not that we are all by our own, but we are all connected.
Yes, this is the first level we want to touch. Yep, complete interconnectedness. So yes, from a distance, you can say this is you and this is me, but the closer you get, the harder that is to find. You know, and if you were to get on a molecular level, right, if we were looking, I don't know, at all of us under a microscope, there would just be all of this energy and space, and, you know, arbitrarily you could draw a boundary and say, here you are, right, but still it is all just interconnected atoms and movement and all of these things, right? So it's the relative world is by nature deceptive because it appears that everything is distinct, right? It appears that everything is fundamentally separate. So the appearance of the relative truth to our minds is deceptive just by its nature. Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't seem like a problem until you think of the source of all of your conflicts and you realize they came from that illusion of separateness. Yeah, every single conflict you have ever experienced, internally and externally, came from the illusion of separateness, right? Every bad behavior, every mistake came from the illusion of separateness. So it doesn't seem like an issue while we're sitting here quietly being friends, right? But it's the fundamental issue. And so while we're sitting here quietly being friends is the time to do the meditation, because we're calm enough to pull it apart a bit, right? This is the time. In the heat of the moment, using a meditation on emptiness can help, but only if you've done some work in the past, right? It will really help you in the heat of the moment if you've done this work, right? But if you've never done this work, in the moment of anger, saying, awaken to your illusion of separateness, you'll punch someone in the face. Say, shut up, you and your separateness, I'll show you separateness. Right? Right?
Tell him that he's empty.
Nice. Exactly. This is all of it. This is the, quote, evil. It's not evil, it's ignorance, but then evil comes from it, right? So, all of this work is getting you to more and more subtle layers of understanding this. Why? Because you'll be kinder and happier if you do, right? Even a very surface understanding, even a confused kind of, all right, let's see, even that actually loosens things up. right? So even if you're not totally sure what's going on, even if you're still a little bit like, what? Even the question that things are not as they seem starts to help. Yeah? Even that question is different than what most people are in their life. Most people believe exactly that things are as they appear to them. This is a good person, this is a bad person, I am a this person, this is a good bite, and they just believe 100% their opinions as if that is just obvious, right? But I mean, even, take something as everyday as music. If someone says to you, this is good music, right? Does that make it good music? No. Just because they like it? It's good music for them. It's good music merely labeled by the mind, right? Like, think of how many opinions people could have about one piece of music, right?
And what about how do Buddhism treats, like you say that you have stomach intuition? Like intuition. Does it have any meaning or not in Buddhism?
It's a habit, right? It's a habitual response. So your quote intuition is you have recognized a pattern. Yeah? The subtler layer of you has recognized a pattern is occurring. And so you have this feeling of this is right, this is wrong, this is danger, this is good. That quote gut feeling that seems random and spontaneous is actually you recognizing patterns that you've seen already in your life. You're just not bringing it to words forefront in your mind. It's beginningless time habits. So some of them are very accurate. Some of those gut feelings are very accurate, and some of them are nonsense, right? People have a gut feeling at the basis of their, racism, right? People have a gut feeling at the basis of a lot of their irrational fears, right? So just because it kind of is like, oh, I feel this way, it's true, doesn't make it true, but sometimes it is, right? Sometimes you have very well observed patterns that you really have been accurate about, so you can trust it. But it's always worth having that space that checks. Always have the space that checks. Yeah. That's a good person, is it? That's a bad person, is it? Just check. Yeah.
What are compositional factors?
Compositional factors is the kind of the laundry list category of all the other mental factors, right? So what we say is, okay, form, that's important. Feeling, that's important. Discrimination, that labeling factor, that's very important to look at, right? Primary consciousness, very important. And then you have compositional factors, also very important, but just everything else. So they kind of throw everything into a bag and say, and intention and attention and love and compassion and anger and all of these other things, compositional factors. Yeah, so it's kind of everything else. Yeah, all the other mental factors. Yeah.
And your email so to ask you specific questions,
Sure, yeah, sure. Yeah, ask Tal. She'll give it to you, won't she? Because she's a nice person. From your own side. Be labeled. Yeah, because you have her email. Yeah, that's fine. Totally. And we have the mind module on the YouTube, don't we? Hey. Yeah, the mind module of Discovering Buddhism. Remember, we did a whole thing. Yeah, so if you want to review it or go back over it. Oh, yes.
איך אומרים הפצעה והתמוססות? הפצעה והתמוססות. הפצעה והתמוססות. משהו מפציע. Rising and
ceasing.
Dissolution.
Yep.
That's what happened with the potentials.
Yeah.
That they arise and then they dissolve and arise something a bit else.
Yep. And that's that too is empty, right? But yeah, that's the way that you touch impermanence. You see, things arise and they cease and they arise and they cease. But if you look at emptiness, the point at which you call it arising and the point at which you call it dissolution becomes again more abstract. Yeah, and don't get crazy. Like, don't meditate on emptiness while you're driving. Okay, don't meditate on emptiness during dangerous times. Right. This is something for quiet moments at home where you have the space to go deeply without getting reactive, And then in your daily life, you touch what you've already understood and bring it in whenever you can. And you bring it in especially when you feel hooked into an opinion where you're sure that you're right. When you're sure of it, that is a good time to explore emptiness. Especially when you're mad about what you're right about. Yes, especially when you're angry. Yes. Yeah, and especially when you're attached, right? Yeah.
I understand that I really practice getting your opinions and so on. Yet there are things like ethical issues that we can tell it is not the right thing to do.
Absolutely. Yep.
So
that's fine.
Yeah. So I don't want to be hooked in it.
Yeah.
And yet, well, how can I
hold the two? Hold these two things at the same time. Yeah.
Not to be attached to an opinion.
Yeah. While still.
Yet to have clear view.
Yes.
That something is not ethical.
Exactly.
My values or morality and so.
Yep. And this is the dance between understanding karmic cause and effect and understanding that everything lacks inherent existence. And for us to hold those two things at the same time is going to take a while. So right now we alternate between them because they both serve a good function. So karmic cause and effect, that positive actions lead to happiness and destructive actions lead to suffering, completely exists. That is a true thing, and everything lacks inherent existence. So then how do you function in the world knowing both of those without being paralyzed, right? And thinking, I can't move, what is true? Right? You hold your ethics, but you hold them lightly, right? So you completely land on your ethics with readiness to shift if you get more information. Right? Like say something simple that we all agree on, like stealing is bad, right? That ethic, right? Stealing is bad. Let's hold that one. Please, everyone, let's hold that one, right? So that's an ethics, okay? So you land on that solidly with conviction, but with awareness of emptiness, you go, stealing does not exist from its own side. The idea of possessing and possession does not exist from its own side. The concept of when something is held and when something is taken does not exist from its own side. So I can hold that while still saying, don't ever steal, right? But you're landing on it with commitment, with integrity, right? But still with enough gentleness to hear more. Gentleness to hear more. Yeah, and so we don't want to ever give up the core ethics of non-harmfulness ever. But the more you understand emptiness, the easier ethics becomes. Yes, because most of the ethics are to help us not hurt each other while we realize we're interconnected, right? As soon as you realize you're interconnected, it makes no sense to hurt each other because you're hurting each other is hurting you, right? Like there is no agreement between the hand and the foot that they won't hurt each other, right? And if you hurt your foot and your hand soothes your foot and says, oh, foot, are you okay? It's not like later the hand's like, all right, foot, now pay me back, right? There's no like argument between them. But they're two separate things, yes? The hand is not the foot. And yet there's an obvious understanding, there's a connected system, right? So you don't have to tell the hand, don't hurt your foot. You don't have to tell it that ethic. Right? But if you were some, strange person that didn't realize your limbs were connected, you might have to explain that, right? Right? And maybe, occasionally some babies, have you seen them? They don't know when they're hurting themselves, right? And they're crying, and they're like, what's happening? And you're like, that is your own hand. Stop doing that, right? Right? So, we don't have to do that with our own, quote, our own physical body. But we don't realize that we're all like that, right? We're as connected as the hand and the foot. So hurting each other doesn't make sense when you realize emptiness. But until we realize emptiness, we need the ethics to keep ourselves from hurting each other. Yeah? Yeah.
So I think stealing is an example where it's really easy to see how it's really like online.
Yeah.
What about things that are more inherent nature, like thinking about killing or causing like physical suffering, animal hold and stuff like that it's not enough, like there's a creature there.
Yeah, you hold that ethic, hold it strongly, right? Hold it strongly, but with a sense that there is more to the story. That's what you're trying to hold, right? That the reason this came about is not a simple one thing. The impact of what's happening is not simple one thing, right? While at the same time saying, perhaps I should help organize laws to prevent harm to animals. Do that, please, right? While at the same time knowing the harmer of the animal and the animal that is harmed have a more complicated relationship than what we're just seeing, right? There's a more complicated karmic history, there's a more complicated unfolding, so we don't really know the whole story, but we know enough to say, don't hurt that. That's fine. So you still, so it's very difficult to hold these two things simultaneously, which is why you just get very steady with ethics. And then when you get into your everyday life, your ordinary human interactions that are more abstract, like who was right and who was wrong in that argument about Donald Trump, right? That's maybe not abstract, no, I'm kidding. Right, so when you get into those kind of arguments, there's enough space in your mind to hear more of the story. There's more space in your mind to de-identify from your opinions so that you can start to play together about what is closer to the truth. If your opinions are you, as soon as you start to talk about ideas, you have conflict. Same with the case of, hurting animals, right? If you don't have any space in your mind, you could start to think people who hurt animals are bad, when in fact, they have a complicated history that made that behavior possible in them. And they might be fantastic people, except for that behavior, right? And that behavior probably makes sense to them. So if we had the space to hear their story, they would maybe feel safe enough for us to share our opinion. But if we just go in guns blazing, you're wrong, we're going to stop you, that's going to only kind of put the lid on something that will pop up later in another form. Yeah, it's not an effective long-term strategy. What has actually changed your mind, right? When you've held a view and then shifted it, it's usually been when someone has met you heart to heart first and heard you out completely and heard the story of why you believe what you believe and just accepted that makes sense to you. And then gently they could introduce other ideas and gently maybe you could shift. Yeah, so it's also looking at what is an effective way to live in this world if we want to do more good. Yeah, is it trying to overpower people or is it trying to meet them? Yes?
Developing compassion towards the ignorant helps.
Mm-hmm.
But then you label ignorance.
What?
Well,
Then you do
for me, somebody who is killing, will suffer greatly.
Yeah.
He just doesn't know that he will suffer greatly.
But then you put a label on him. He's ignorant. He doesn't know.
Yeah, because he doesn't know that he's committing a horrendous crime from which he will suffer for eons.
So the labeling is not the problem, right? The labeling is not the problem. It's believing that the label is 100% as it seems, right? So we have to keep labeling while still holding the openness,
but if I
right?
believe he's ignorant because he does not, he's killing.
Yeah.
And so my opinion gets stronger. I mean, he's let's put it he's an idiot, basically.
Yeah.
He does not know.
That's different, yeah, that's different. So we have to define, we have to define terms. Yeah, it's tricky, right? Because definitely it has that association in English when you say it generally, but when we're talking about ignorance, it means not knowing. And we all are ignorant of many things, right? So, to say he is ignorant about the cause and effect relationship of what he's doing there can open your heart a little bit to not thinking he's bad for doing it, to thinking it makes sense to him why he's doing it. What's a way to increase his wisdom? Because then he'll stop, right? Another way to make him stop is to handcuff him and throw him in jail, but then he's stopping through an oppressive method that will pop out in another way later, and the cycle of violence continues. If he himself decides this was the wrong thing to do, the cycle ends there, right? So when you're saying, okay, this person has ignorance, or is ignorant about, you're not calling them ignorance. Yeah, you're saying this aspect has confusion, how can I bring wisdom to it? Yeah, because all of us have fundamental ignorance and all sorts of other extra ignorances about tons of stuff. So it's not like a strong value judgment. It's just an identification of some relative truth. Yeah, just very gently.
With compassion.
Yeah, with compassion. Yeah.
I think that when we relate to issues like killing, it is quite obvious to us that in daily life, the thing is only to apply it in daily life. If somebody just insults us or takes our parking or making barbecue and all the smoke comes to my apartment and all this really
absolutely
stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
It could be very annoying, and how can I bear
exactly
stay with equanimity and not go into aversion, and yet keep my ethics and values and my lines and my borders and so on. This is a game.
Yeah, and this is a personal moment-to-moment process, right? What that looks like in each moment is individualized to you, is individualized to the situation, and relies so much on your own wisdom, right? So analytical meditation is educating your mental factor of discrimination. It's educating that so that what you meet, you label more correctly. And when you label things more correctly, that creates more positive conditions for old positive karma to ripen as positive feelings. So a bodhisattva, when they meet a very, very difficult person, they see a very, very difficult person, but the feeling that arises is happiness, right? Isn't that weird, right? We see a difficult person, and we have a suffering response, and we think that has to be a direct correlation, that there's no choice but for that to be the response. The bodhisattva thinks, here is my opportunity for practice. I'm so happy. Here's my opportunity for practice. So for us, we can't force ourselves to feel that. What we do is in quiet moments, explore the idea that difficult people have helped us develop wisdom. Difficult people have helped us build strength, and we meditate on that enough that slowly, as we meet difficult people, our response softens, and it's gradual. Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure that I understand. So the self is the 5 aggregates, as you said.
That which is merely labeled on the 5 aggregates. Yes. Tiny distinction.
And the mind is a part of this, or the mind is part of this?
Yep. The mind is one of the 5 aggregates.
Okay.
Yep, totally. Yes.
I'm a little confused about ignorance issue. I mean, if we find 2 things that someone did something and my perception is that killing is something wrong, he doesn't know or is ignorant about the issue, isn't that putting me on a different level, and that's wrong too, because I'm better than him, kind of?
It can lead to that very easily, right? It can, it depends on your motivation, and it definitely could lead to what you're describing. But, just like when we see that there's a difference between feeling an unpleasant feeling and having the reaction of aversion, there's a difference between seeing an ignorance there and deciding they're bad because of it, or I'm better because of it. They're 2 different steps. Right? And we're just used to linking those steps. If I label this, it means that. You could just be like, there is a confusion there. Like me, they have confusion. Theirs is just in this topic. Mine is in all these other topics. So it's, that we're all in the same boat, that we all have Buddha nature. All of us are identical in having Buddha nature, and no one's Buddha nature is better than anyone else's Buddha nature. And we all have innate ignorance, and everyone's innate ignorance causes trouble. Yeah, what the trouble looks like is what's individual. The trouble looks different, but we all suffer because of it. Right? Yeah.
What do we take to other life from the self that you just described? Or is it another module that I should
yes, both.
Which one?
It is a lot. It's a complex issue that will take a while to process. But the simple answer, right, just to kind of give you something to think about. The question, say again.
What from what we label as self, as I, we take to other lives?
Yeah, what do we take? I mean, is the question, what do we take from now to our next life, or specifically about the self?
What stays from the self, what goes after, so we work, incentive to work is big.
I don't know what's wrong with me with the water. So what goes from life to life, we talk about this mental continuum, right? The mental continuum is the mind and the mental factors, moment to moment continuity, right? So it's not like your mind pops in and out of existence, does it? It's there all the time continuously while changing moment to moment. So that analogy of like a river, right? Like a river. And in that river, that continuity of consciousness, there has been the label I there, right? The label I there exists the whole time. But the label I then gets more coarse versions on the top of it, like a new name each life. So the name is more coarse than the sense of self, right? So we carry this, and so we carry this sense of I. We have since beginningless time, this sense of inherently existent I, the false one. We've carried that the whole time. But even when we realize emptiness and no longer grasp at an inherently existent self in the same way, still there is the self that is nominally existent, merely labeled on the mind, right? So that is still there, right? But what we're trying to get rid of is the wrong idea about it, that it inherently exists, right? But we've had that forever, and we'll take it with us for a while, I'm guessing, right? I'm guessing. But, we're just slowly cracking the shell of the false identity. We're cracking it a little bit. You can do the very easy surface version, which isn't even sort of taught in Buddhism, but is like a level more course, which is to think of character traits that you have, that you identify with, right? So you think of yourself as an ethical person. Okay, that's like me, I am ethics, me, I ethics. And then you break it apart by seeing, those ethics only exist in the context of this culture. Those ethics were taught to me by someone else. Those ethics can only operate if there are other people to use them with. I am not ethics. Ethics has wound up here, right? And yay, let's keep them, right? Yay, let's keep them. But, even those sort of surface characteristics, like, I am very intelligent. All right, well, there was a genetic aspect, there was a scholastic aspect, there was a habitual aspect. Can you really take ownership of anything that you are, right? And that is helpful for both the good traits and the bad traits. Right? If you think I am an amazing person and have lots of pride about it, then you are not fun to live with, right? Right? But if you realize all of your traits that you think are so amazing came from all sorts of places, none of them stood alone, it becomes impossible to have pride, but you still are happy they're there, right? You're still happy that you can read, you're still happy that you can drive, yeah. Thankful, but you don't have this like it's me feeling. And then your bad qualities, quote bad qualities, you have a short temper, you're easily depressed, I don't know, you have a general apathy towards whatever your bad qualities are. You realize they came about through countless causes and conditions, right? There were experiences in your life that fed them. There were family habits that fed them. There were things you carried in from past lives. All of this stuff, and if all of that stuff hadn't happened, your behavior trait would be different, right? So you just sort of like, all right, there is anger here, and it is unfortunate, but I don't have to think it's me or I'm bad because of it. I'm just working on it as a project because it's here.
So what is being taken to the next life?
Karma.
Mostly
karma. The mind, right? Yeah, the mind carrying karma. The mind carrying karma and its Buddha nature and its ignorance.
And it develops as it goes along, it travels along.
Theoretically, yes. Theoretically. Yep. Yep, I'm sure that we get some dodgy lifetimes. We've had some, cockroach lifetimes where we haven't gotten any work done, but it's okay. It's not a lost cause, right? So yes, what we take from life to life is our continuity of consciousness that carries the karma, that carries the Buddha nature, that carries the innate ignorance. All right, so are you ready for a little bit about close placement on phenomena, or do you have some remnant questions?
What about the question that we finished the last one? I'm staying with the confusion.
Ask again which question. There were many questions. Who am I?
I mean, the self, according to the relation to the mind.
Yeah.
How it goes and
So, what is the relationship between the self and the mind? The relationship between the self and the mind is that the self is merely labeled on the mind. It's not an extra component that watches or holds it. On the mind. On the mind. On, by, both. Both. But you're going to get trapped in your cycle of doom. I can feel it. I can feel it. Right. Look, let's look at the self like this room. Okay? Say the self is of a similar type to this room. So you say, is there a room here? Everyone says, yes, there's a room here. Right? Right? But we label it on the basis of the floor and the ceilings and the walls and the windows and the door, right? We can label room on that basis, right? But where is the room besides those things? In addition to those things? Is there a room besides that? No, right? The same is true of the self. So you can say, what are the walls and the windows and the floor of the self? You can say, the body and the mind and the discrimination and the feelings. Yeah, but there is not then another self, right, extra that's findable besides that. So you can say there's a self there, but as soon as you look for it, you're finding the parts, just like the room, right? Just like the room. Does that help-ish? Yeah, there's a million examples, right? And you just have to keep playing with it in your head and going, what? Right? Just keep doing that again and again, and it does get clearer with repetition.
By the mind, but you said it on the mind as well.
Yes. By and on.
Yeah.
Can you explain this?
Which one is confusing? The on or the by?
The on is not here.
On is not clear.
On the mind is a bit, because it looks like...
It's like a mirror. The mind is like a mirror. It's reflected on the mirror. The self.
Say again.
It looks like the self by the mind. This direction is clear, more clear.
Yeah.
And on the mind, it looks like the self is different than the mind.
And the self is different than the mind. Yeah, the self is different than the mind. That's the very thing. The self is just basically the label we put on some parts. It's the label we put on some parts. The way we put the label on those parts is from one aspect of the mind, the mental factor of discrimination, right? The mental factor of discrimination, you could imagine it steps outside of itself, sees all the parts and says, self, right? And it goes back in, right? Right, like it's if like the window of the room was able to tell the rest of it, this is a room, you guys. Yeah, or my teacher likes hand and fingers, right? So where is the hand? And so you say, that's the hand. No, that's the palm of the hand, right? That's the fingers of the hand. Hand and its parts are one in entity. They're just distinct mentally. You can isolate pieces, but each of the pieces has pieces, has pieces, has pieces, right? So when you say labeled by the mind or labeled on the mind, what you're talking about when it's by the mind is one component of mind, which is observational and labeling, can see all of the bits and say, that is the self. Yeah?
But mind is part of the self.
All right, I think you should talk amongst yourselves in the break because we're perhaps having lost in translation, right? It's becoming circular, right? It's becoming circular. So I think just hold the question. It will become clear, right? And we will come back to it another session. Yeah, another day, another course.
Another life.
Another life. This is in the nunnery recently. my friends, I was so jealous of them because they spent 2 straight years on emptiness, right? 2 straight years. And I wish I could have joined them. It would have been great. But even when we did it in our sort of traditional study program, it took 8 weeks to do like introduction, 8 weeks, right? And that's like all day, So know that it is more complex, and we're getting a little stuck in trying to get it simple and quantifiable. But even just this basic idea that things are interconnected, this helps. And that not just this outside reality is interconnected, but your inside reality is interconnected. And that's the profound thing. Yeah, that your inside reality is interconnected. Okay, so if you can hold at least that, that's going to help. And it will become more specific with time and with thought. Yeah. And some of it's karmic issues, right? Some of these ideas come very quickly to people, and sometimes they take ages, and it's not about your intelligence, right? Very, very intelligent people have trouble with this topic sometimes, and very traditionally unintelligent people with lower IQs sometimes pick it up, no problem, right? So it's not about your intelligence if it's not coming clear. Sometimes it's about some karmic obstacles, and you just clear them, just clear them, do some purification, you'll be fine. Right? It'll come, right? Right, prostrations. And, just an intellectual understanding does unlock so many negative habits, right? So you just get better and better at your intellectual understanding, which then gives birth to a perceptual understanding, through repetition. Yeah, so just keep playing with it, reading about it. Yeah. Okay, so we'll have a little break, and then we'll do the meditation on close placement of phenomena, because I'm guessing it would be a lot to squeeze in. Okay, so come on back at 4:30, 16:30.